Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Kalen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Kalen, it feels like it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, literally a minute.
Literally, yeah.
How are you, Sam?
I'm actually doing really great. I've had some coffee this morning. I've saw the sunrise. I've done lots of work before I got here. It's a great day so far.
It's nice to come in with a clear mind and focus and
it is.
Not stressed about anything.
Yeah, and I'm not stressed about anything today.
Well, today we've got a wonderful guest.
Oh, should I be stressed?
You should be very stressed.
Okay.
It's an origin story of a Victoria or Vancouver Island based business that has had some successes in a very difficult category, but it's Jill Van Gyn-Carr. Is that right?
Yeah, Van Gene, and I
Van
recently hyphenated it to Carr after 9 years of marriage.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah. So Jill Van Gyn-Carr is the legal name, but I often am just known as Jill Van Gene.
And Jill Van Gyn-Carr.
Yes.
You own FATSO.
I do.
Oh my
Tell
God!
us about-
Everyone's heard of FATSO.
Tell us
I
about
hope so.
FATSO. Talk to us about your biz.
Yeah. Well, it'll be 6 years this October coming up, which seems so strange to say because
it's crazy.
it feels like a blink of an eye. But I started it back in 2016. I just don't have one of those like origin stories that most entrepreneurs have, or at least the ones that we hear about, because I think a lot of entrepreneur stories are crafted in some ways.
Of course, marketing.
All of our stories are crafted in some ways,
totally.
right?
My story did not start with me having like a brilliant idea in the kitchen. I didn't have like a family member or child that, had a dietary intolerance and I wanted to create a peanut butter for them or, just a better peanut butter for all people.
Couldn't you just make something up?
Yeah, I know. I really came to FATSO in an unusual way. And it sort of starts, I hate to go back because it sounds like if I'm going to go back, it's like, well, I was born in 1980.
No, dude, go back.
But in 2010, I entered recovery from alcohol and drugs. So I spent 15 years in addiction, and I was 30.
Wow.
And that was a big point. I mean, really, to get this off to a
hot
start.
This is all right.
We're off to the
Bare my
races
soul.
here.
I love it.
I've been very open about my journey, but so I came into recovery in 2010, and I was 30 years old, and I had a lot of ambition and sort of a new lease on life, as they say. And I had done a degree in political science back in my undergrad and wanted to make good on some promises I had made to myself after, clearly losing a good chunk of my life to addiction. And so I went and I did this master's degree at Royal Roads in human security and peace building. And if you don't know,
I don't know what that is.
So it's actually just kind of the study of development work. So international development is really where it is, policy making and working for NGOs like the UN or the Red Cross, that type of thing. And so I had these ambitions to go work at the UN, and I graduated top of my class, and I published my research paper that was on the nexus of a rising oil industry and a post-conflict society, and I really thought that I was off to the races. But when I did some research in northern Uganda, and I became very disillusioned, not only with international work, but with academia itself. Yeah. Because I was now 35 and thinking, okay, well, maybe I'll do a PhD. And then I had that sort of thought, well, what happens after I finish the PhD? And, trying to get a job at 35 in development work, there's lots of good volunteer jobs out there.
That's right.
There aren't a lot that are going to pay you well or, a master's degree just doesn't buy you much these days. I didn't realize that currency had fallen dramatically by the time I graduated. So I really had this period of time for about a year and a half after I graduated getting increasingly frustrated and resentful with my situation because I kind of thought, well, I had, I've sort of fulfilled these things that society had expected of me.
Yeah.
I got clean, I became a functioning member of society. I got this advanced education. I did really well. And there just wasn't an opportunity for me on the other side. And
right, which is frustrating.
Super frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I spent a year and a half really dealing with the fallout of that and really questioning, like, what
you got to be questioning it
do?
all.
Yeah.
In particular because you're coming from, the recovery standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So your idea and the amount of work it would have taken. I mean, people don't this is just a little bit of an aside
Mm-hmm.
on, people that are, addicted to drugs
Mm-hmm.
or alcohol. Like, they work incredibly hard
Mm-hmm.
to some cases hide it, to function in society at whatever level they can. And then when you go to the recovery component of it, it's incredible amount of work. And then obviously it's super successful to get a master's degree after that. And then to be, faced with, wow, this is, the disillusionment of, your dream, right?
Yeah, that was very much it. I realized that working internationally was, especially in the development field, just having seen it on the ground, I knew that probably wasn't the direction I wanted to go. I love research. I thought a PhD, but academia. My mom was a tenure professor at 30, and I just saw what it did to her life. She's a brilliant academic, but it was tough. And I actually had a lot of friends that were doing, their PhDs or postdocs, and they were just basket cases. And I was like, I just don't want to do this. Like, it seems it's so hard to get teaching positions. So anyways, I spent a year and a half really digging myself into a pretty deep depression, which was scary because I had felt this sense of hopelessness and failure in addiction. Yeah. And now I felt that without the cushion of oblivion that drugs and alcohol provide, because that's how I would cope.
Just escape.
Yeah, so it was painful. It was a really painful realization. And I had been applying for government jobs because we had just bought a house, and then I thought, oh gosh, I'm 35, I got to start planning a family, and so all this stuff started kind of piling on, and I just remember getting these letters in the mail after applying for government jobs that would say, I go through 3 or 4 interviews and, make it to the end. And then the letter would come and it would say, this position has been made redundant. It doesn't exist anymore. So I was applying for these jobs that were, the assistant to somebody in the bowels of the legislature. Yeah. And had I secured one of these positions, I would have thought, okay, I've got my foot in the door. I can work my way up. And I just never could get my foot in the door. Yeah. So I ended up taking a job at a local health food restaurant here in Victoria as an operations manager. We were trying to franchise the business, and that's a business story for another time. But I spent some time working at this place, and there was this peanut butter that we were selling at the store called FATSO. So
was that the brand? Was it a brand, or was it just the name that they put on it? Did the owner say, "Oh, we're going to call this peanut butter FATSO"?
Yeah, so it had a label,
like
you would see a peanut butter today. It wasn't. I mean, I try not to throw the previous owners under the bus too much.
No, but
we don't have a good working relationship. He's still in my life sometimes, but it was a small brand. Really, I just thought, okay, so it had, MCT oil, coconut oil, chia seeds, flax. It had some other ingredients in it when we first started it. But I was really into CrossFit at the time. I had really gotten myself into nutrition, and it had no sugar. It tasted amazing. It was an incredible source of protein. It had all these amazing plant-based fats in it. And I just thought, this is a perfect food.
Yeah.
This is great. And then the name on top of it, referring to the good fats we're putting in the nut butter, I just thought, this is $1 million idea. And so we would order this peanut butter in, and we'd order 3 or 4 cases, and then we'd get 1 case every month or something. And customers were coming in seeking this out. We would hear that I think it was on the shelves at maybe the Root Cellar and Peppers, a few places, and people would literally drive around and try and find this peanut butter. And so I started talking to other retailers and saying, what's the deal with this? Why? What's your relationship with the owners? And they said, well, we can never keep it in stock. And So I ended up reaching out to them and said, hey, listen, I'd love to buy in, maybe do some marketing and really get this thing off the ground. And I had no experience, but I just thought like this, it's going to fail if nobody steps in. And I was turned down. And I think, I guess it was probably around July or August of 2016. I got a call from one of the retailers and said, hey, I know you've been interested in this brand for a while. VHA has seized all their inventory.
Oh, no.
What?
Because, and this is why I hesitated when you said, was it a brand or just on the label? It's because it wasn't actually a company and it didn't have any licenses.
Oh, so it was just being made in the basement.
It was just being made out of somebody's like basement or garage, right?
Yeah.
So, the inventory was seized. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Oh, wow. This is.
Yes.
I had no.
Yeah.
I love it.
Now the previous owner would debate this, but this is what happened.
Yeah.
So, so I stepped in and said, hey, listen, let me take this off your hands. And I bought it for about the price of a used car. Yeah. And I will say this, had I failed in this endeavor, I probably would have paid too much.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
But I didn't. Yeah. So that is how I came to FATSO. And it's interesting because I've often drawn parallels between where I was at that point in my life and where this peanut butter was at its point in its life.
Right. Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
and you guys just met.
Yeah. And we both really needed somebody to believe in us.
Yeah.
And
show us some love.
Yeah.
Give us some attention.
Yep.
Give us an opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah. So so that's how I started FATSO. And one of the first things I did was Google like how to start a business because I had no business experience. So that's the origin story.
But you had work ethic. Like
I had work ethic,
yeah.
and I had research skills, which was really, really important. I'm always so surprised at I have lots of aspiring entrepreneurs reach out. And they always say, how do I start a business? And the first thing I always ask them is, do you have a lawyer? Do you have an accountant? Do you have insurance?
Yes.
And they go, okay, I probably need to make some phone calls. Because those were the first things that I didn't know I needed any of that.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a business license for your municipality, all that stuff. So lots of Googling and paperwork and filing of things.
You're obviously a very determined, purposeful person, though. Yeah. And so I'm sure that whether it was peanut butter or whatever you were going to do, it was going to succeed.
Yeah, I have an incredible fear of failure. So I know that people, like, I want to say, like, oh, I'm driven out of a passion for, I don't know, healthy food or whatever. But a lot of it is just, I think it's probably true for a lot of people, too, is just, trying to keep your head above water. And I remember driving to the root cellar with an order a few months after I started the business and thinking, if this doesn't work out, I don't know what happens next. Like it was pretty scary. I just remember like gripping the steering wheel and thinking, this really needs to work out. So
well, it's a bit of the commitment too, because you've made a commitment to do something. Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of an underrated, I don't even know if I'm going to word this right, but value of an entrepreneur is once you make, when I started my entrepreneurial journey, I would just I was more excited in the process of starting businesses and getting involved and being connected to stuff. I didn't really have like a main focus. I had probably 5 or 6 different things, and somebody said, oh, I want to do this. I'm like, oh, well, let's do it together. Mm-hmm. And then I realized after, I don't know, a number of years, I did this for probably 15 years where I just was starting businesses and I was addicted to doing deals and negotiating and things like that. But I realized once I had like 3 or 4 successful businesses that I actually needed to work in those businesses in order to secure the success. But I do remember the same feeling of like, holy shit, like I've chosen this, plan or this process, and if it doesn't work, then feel of failure I think drives a lot of entrepreneurs.
It drives me. I know that I always tell people I got into business because I love hospitality and I had a really good opportunity and I could be selling anything, but really I was me trying to sell me not failing was the real driver behind all my motivation. I can really relate to that. Just that fear of like, what if this doesn't work? Oh, that's not an option. It will work. Yeah,
and it has to be. And I think it works to entrepreneurs' advantage to acknowledge that being some of that foundation, because I think there's what I've learned about entrepreneurship in the past 6 years, I don't like. Yeah. There's a wider culture around entrepreneurship that I really tend to resist, which is like this hustle hard, grind it out, the fetishizing of 20-hour days or 60 to 80-hour work weeks. And I understand that's necessary for some jobs, but I just find that there's a whole culture around it that creates so much anxiety to succeed that I see it all the time in people, mental health issues. I mean, you would know this in the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
And it just, to me, I don't know, it doesn't jive with me at all. Like I want to, once I started to get the business off the ground and it started to bring in some revenue and we started to see, some traction with the product, I had to ask the question, like, what do I want out of this? Why am I doing this? Because if I'm being honest with myself, I didn't do this to create like a healthier peanut butter for the world.
Yeah.
I did it because I was desperate for a job and I was desperate to make good on, some sort of career path at 35, 36 years old when I started this business. And that's not the, shiniest reason for starting a business, but it's the real reason. And, but that's really helped me understand what I need to get out of the business, what I want to do in my daily life, and then how do I also remove myself from the business in a way that's healthy. And
well, I think that is a proper approach. Like, I think as entrepreneurs, like, obviously in various businesses I've done, I've had to, I've been crying in the floor. Holy fuck, what have I done? Like, why am I doing it? Or knowing that I have to work my butt off in order to either save something or to keep it moving. But the goal has always been to work less.
Yeah.
And I got into business so I'm kind of a little bit lazy. I enjoy my free time. I have other activities. So creating a business that can do that, I think, is the entrepreneurial opportunity that, if you're doing it and thinking that you just have to keep working, you got to work smarter, not harder. And, scaling businesses, for an entrepreneur is literally to get off the tools.
Yeah.
So that you can just do the big picture kind of stuff. And it's not always easy because it's the ebb and flow of the business cycle. And depending on, level of success, the people that you've hired, whether they can support you in the right ways and all that stuff. But I think everybody should be looking to get into business to work less.
Yes.
And that should be the focus.
Yeah. I really like the hustle part. Like, I'll say this. The first 3 years of my business, I loved it. I ran the business solo for 2 years, and I loved being seen as a hustler.
Yeah.
I loved being seen as a doer and somebody who gets things done, and I really thrived off that. But there's also a period of time where I started to recognize my own limitations because I'm not an expert. Like, I had to remind myself this continuously because, you get to a level of growth where you're like, this is out of my hands. And I remember clearly thinking, like, it comes with, getting listings in bigger chains.
Yeah.
And then you start to see this paperwork come through and it's really daunting. And I don't understand any of it. And actually, I kind of don't understand any of it now.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really technical. And it's really difficult to deal with. So I had to bring on some people that could help me do that.
Yeah.
But, the first 3 years, I just remember I would pack up my car. And this is like one of those stories that you tell over and over. But I would put exactly 73 cases of FATSO in the back of my car. It would hold that much peanut butter and a demo kit. And this is when I started to expand to Nanaimo, Vancouver. Yeah. And every 2 weeks, I was getting on the ferry, going over to Vancouver and hitting the pavement, literally walking into stores, hawking my peanut butter, doing demos in stores that I had listings in. And, that was really how I built the business. I got a reputation for just being a hustler.
Yeah,
it was
providing
great.
that level of service and attention, right?
Totally. And that helped build the business. But, it does get to the point where I really thrived off that, but that grind can be addictive and the hustle can be addictive and you can lose sight really easily of why you started the business in the first place.
It's a real culture out there too. Who can sleep the least, who can work the most hours. It feels really bro-y.
It is really bro-y, yeah.
And it's nothing that I'm interested in. I'm happy to hear that you're beyond that and you're looking for smarter business.
Yeah, toxic work culture, it's deeply tied to, ideas around toxic masculinity as well because entrepreneurship and business is often tied to like the Wolves of Wall Street type personas. And you know what, if that's your thing, go do it. But I don't like this overall culture of putting so much emphasis on the work that it takes to get rich. Because it's like, what happens when you get rich? What then? Are you going to take some time off, or are you going to chase the next million?
Because you're always chasing. You talk about drug addiction.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Like it is the dopamine you get from doing this. And going back to, my realization, and I was driving back from Las Vegas actually, and I realized that I already had enough on my plate for one, but I already, trying to evaluate measuring success. So someone outside success, you're going to have 1,000 Big Wheel burgers, for example. And I'm like, I have no interest in having 1,000 Big Wheel burgers. Is it an expandable brand? Did we build it to expand? Yeah. But, I'm like, okay, well, maybe 8's enough. Maybe 7's enough. Yeah. And chasing, because at some point you have to stop chasing. Yeah. And you've got to start enjoying your life. And you didn't build a business to shackle yourself to handcuffs, right?
Yeah.
To
me, it's very strange. Like I've really examined this culture of like the growth mindset, which is weird to me because it's like when is enough? Like growth seems to be one of these things that is exponential and without end.
Yes.
And I keep hearing this, like, in order for a business to survive, you have to keep growing. And my question is why? Like, why? I get it. I mean, I suppose that can be a goal, but we had a really tough time during the pandemic, and we've had a tough couple of years, and growth has not come as naturally as it did in the first few years.
Yeah.
And I've really struggled with, trying not to say, okay, this growth doesn't equal, your self-worth.
Yes. Yeah.
Or your level of productivity, or, who you are as a business owner. There's some pretty intense global forces happening.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter, like, how much typing I do on my keyboard, I'm not going to be able to combat that stuff.
Yeah.
And it's about navigating that in a way that, sustains the business and hopefully sustains myself and my employees as well.
Well, and it's kind of like you can spend a lot, and I talk about this with my team, is like you can spend a lot of time feeling like you're doing stuff, but if there isn't traction, then you're really just wasting your time. So you might as well use that time to do something more enjoyable, and it doesn't necessarily have to feel like, you're specifically working on your business to propel it forward. A lot of times I do have my best growth when I actually just step away.
Yeah.
And then I just think about the business kind of in the background. I used to go to movies a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I just sit in the theater. And I wouldn't even know what the movie was about. But I would just start percolating thoughts. And it would be like, well, where do you... And I wouldn't tell anybody where I was. So it wasn't like I was ashamed, but it would just be where I'd go to think. And then I'd come up with maybe like half an idea.
Right.
And then the next day I'd kind of, this is a decent idea. But... not all work has to be like with a hammer and a nail, right? Sometimes you just need to take a step back, and you can spend a lot of time working on something that doesn't get you anywhere, and then you're sweating and you're like, oh man, I feel like I did something, but did you really do anything? Is it really propelling your business forward?
The growth gets conflated or gets attributed to how successful you are, and I don't believe that at all. I think you can be successful without the growth. They're not the same thing. You can pick how you're successful. I choose to pick how I'm successful. You choose to pick how you're successful. I mean, for me, and I like what you're saying, entrepreneurs are a little bit lazy maybe. I take that to heart.
We're looking for shortcuts.
We're always looking for shortcuts. That's why we're in our own business, because we're not good enough. We're not okay with how other people do things. So we do things in a faster, better way. And our success is not necessarily how many cases of FATSO we can have or how many different locations we can crank out, but how do we get to spend our time? How do we get to enjoy our lives? Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, we get to make all those choices. Have you come to that yet? Or
I have. I often think about what's next for me. Like, what is life after FATSO? If that is the case, and I enjoy my freedom. I mean, I have a 3-year-old at home, and I've got one coming in about 4 weeks. So
do not have it during the podcast, okay?
Trying my best.
Okay.
Yeah, just holding it in.
Hold it in, Jill.
But yeah, I really like I've had so many wonderful experiences with FATSO, and it's allowed me to do so many things. Like all the things that I wanted to do out of, getting this master's degree, I've been able to do in FATSO probably better than I would have as a,
working
paper
for an
pusher.
NGO
Yeah,
or whatever. Yeah.
exactly. And
how is that?
So when I started FATSO, I just remember feeling really fortunate because it took off really quickly. And I thought, okay, well, if I ever get any success, I'm going to use these resources to do some of the things that I had wanted to do with my degree, which, I mean, I don't want to sound like too trite, but like was help people.
Yeah.
Because that's really what I got into it for. And I had really big sort of global ambitions with helping people. But what I realized, and I was taught this by Peers, which is a local sex worker rights and advocacy center, was that you don't need to do a lot to make a huge difference. And that was my first experience in going, okay, like we can start to chip away at some of the issues that I really wanted to tackle and be involved with them in a way that's really meaningful and really impactful.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first International Women's Day. I think it was 2017, March 2017. And there was a lot of talk around International Women's Day and, what were people supporting. And I just saw a lot of sort of generic, like, we support women in general.
Yeah.
And I started to think, like, what voices are the ones that are the most missed in these conversations? And I thought sex workers are.
Yeah, 100%.
And so I decided that I was going to raise some money to do that. And we were going to match donations. And I think we raised almost like $1,700. Not a ton, but, a lot, I guess, at the time. And I donated it to Peers. And I got a call from the executive director, and she said, we've never had a donation of this size from a public-facing company.
What?
That has gone out and said, hey, we're donating, we're raising for Peers, we're going to be supporting Peers. And I was blown away by that.
Yeah.
So that was like, that spark was what really got me into using the business as a catalyst for social justice issues.
Yeah.
And the mandate that became really clear for us was that we weren't going to focus on highly generic or really well-funded causes that are extremely worthy and need a lot of attention and need a lot of funding. We were going to focus on the ones that
fall through the cracks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ones that people don't want to touch because a public-facing business might be associated negatively with some of the things that those causes are engaged with. So that was really the mandate, was to look for marginalized voices, unheard voices, communities and organizations that were not being heard, and put our money and our efforts towards that. And we've had a lot of success with that.
Wow, that's amazing.
I applaud.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have a foundation with Big Wilburger, so we do that.
Yeah.
And we focus on, the marginalized areas where they can't get funding. And, there's obviously great charities out there. I mean, you look at the cancer agencies and things like that. They have the pipeline. They've got, funding. Obviously, maybe not enough.
Federal banks are backing them.
Exactly. So finding
How have they
those
not
little
solved cancer?
Plus, it's so much better as I get a lot of entrepreneurial satisfaction from doing that as well, because it gives you sort of the freedom and flexibility and feels like you're actually doing something.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that entrepreneurs are addicted to.
Totally.
Is, results. I'm doing this and going back to your comment about, I could sit and type emails into the wind and get no results or traction just because of what's going on globally. But you can get a lot of satisfaction from doing stuff that you can touch and feel, and it gives you that reward, that kind of buzz. So
yeah, I've always been really politically engaged, and I've been fortunate enough to be a entrepreneur I've won a lot of awards, and I've had recognition, and having that type of profile, you can really turn that into something really useful.
Yes.
And that I have found to be like the best use of being an overachiever, which is not to pour it necessarily back into like the numbers of the business, but pouring it back into the things that really matter. And that's kind of what gets me up in the morning. Like I get really excited that I can make this impact, and I've seen direct action work really well in people's lives. I mean, we did this micro grant program with Peers last year, and we're going to do it again this year. And I think people think about grants, these like $10,000 grants for somebody to go to university, which is noble and worthy and necessary. But a lot of people don't need $10,000. They need $100, $250. That's the amount that's going to get them out of a situation that they're in, or is going to help shift their direction. And so we thought we'll give out parcels of $250 to 10 applicants that are current and former sex workers. And really low barrier, because a lot of grants, I mean, companies, they want to know that their money is being used well and that it has like some significant outcomes. We didn't do any of that. We just said, we want to know what you want to use it for. And not because we want to police it. We just want to know. We want to know what kind of cool stuff you guys are going to do with this. And we made it so that people did not have to do written applications, because not everybody has strong writing skills. You didn't need ID. You didn't need a permanent address. You didn't need a bank account. We were going to figure out a way to give you the money. We just wanted to engage. And we did this through peers, and we went through the applications, and we had everything from, upcycled taxidermy, which is exactly what it sounds like. just go find those animals somewhere and upcycle them. To somebody that was a Fairy Creek activist, a First Nations person that needed to get home to see family because of a loss, and we paid to help get them home. Somebody that was actually driving people to Fairy Creek, and the brakes on their van had failed. They just need to get them fixed. Somebody that had a really traumatic year, and that just needed dance shoes and some money to enroll in dance classes, because that was going to be, something that they could use for self-care. So it was these smaller things that we saw had bigger impacts in their lives, and it was joyous. We got to help people achieve some joy in their life, because I think people think, I have enough money to go to do an undergrad or whatever, or I have enough money to go, on this scholarship program. But a lot of people just are seeking like moments of joy in their life. And if we can provide a little bit of that, and that's a sense of self-worth, and we don't put these heavy requirements on them. What did you do with the money? We need to see receipts. We need to do this, that, and the other. Just trusting them and giving people autonomy can go so much way towards self-determination.
Totally. And building their confidence. And, there's the direct giving. Like, we do some basic income grants where, $300 a month. And, could we do bigger ones for a smaller group? Maybe. But that $300 just takes the edge off, allows them to cover the rent, allows them to cover food, if they want to do self-care, or, maybe have some leisure. And this idea that people don't have a right to, self-care and looking after themselves, and then it's got, you need to do it for this outcome or that outcome. No, just entrust that they're going to do what's good for them, and they meet a certain. Obviously, you've got to vet, and you've got to meet a certain criteria, but especially in this society, because everybody just views it, because we have a strong social social welfare safety net as our country, but there's a ton of people that don't have access. To the very basic things that we take for granted, and it could be because they don't have a cell phone or don't have an address, or don't have ID, and all these barriers that we who have ID and have a place to live and stuff don't think about. So that again is a very underrated, and I'm kind of, my new activism around this is try to get other businesses to do kind of what we're talking about doing. And mobilizing that entrepreneurial spirit in order to help and give back to society, but make a stronger society. You're building more customers, you're building a stronger community. All of those things just make living, more worthwhile, I guess. This constant pursuit, especially in the business that you're in. I did that for a while. I had an import business that was selling to the big box stores. Right. And and again, learning curve. That was where I got my university education, is just, how to read these contracts that come out, and all the money they take on the back end. And you're like,
don't get me started on that.
I didn't build it into my price, dude. And, then if you're dealing with currency, if you're selling to the United States, there's another whole, I mean, I respect, the area that you're working in tremendously. It's tough.
It is tough.
Yeah.
It is tough. And we've, had, Yeah, like I said, we've had a tough couple of years. I mean, actually, COVID, like the year of COVID, and not that COVID is over, but the big one, 2020. This was, man, that was the year. That was my year.
Yeah,
because
that was the turning point for your, or the, I guess it's not really a turning point, but it's where you kind of jump off from.
Yeah, and we did some interesting things during COVID. And one of the things I studied in my master's degree was food security. And the big gap that I saw immediately, right as, because that whole experience was so interesting. We had, let's think, so March, my son was 6 months old, and we had just let go our first employee, which was a heartbreaker and super unfortunate, but it had to be done. And we had this trade show that we had to go to down in Anaheim. And it's the world's largest natural food trade show, $1 billion event. And everything I had done was a stepping stone to this event.
Yeah.
So that was March 6th or 7th. So it was wild. We got on a plane. It was with my husband and my chief growth officer, who's now moved on to a different job, but still a close friend, Steve Biggs. And so it was myself, my husband, and Steve, and our 6-month-old. And we had started to hear a little bit about, some cases in the United States. We weren't sure what was happening. Is the show going to go on? There was no word. So, I mean, we had invested an incredible amount of money in this. Yeah. And as a smaller business, I could not go.
Yeah.
Right? So we got on the plane. I remember we landed in Seattle, and there was these like cascading cancellations that were happening everywhere, and it felt like the beginning of the movie Contagion. Like it did. Yeah. And everybody was just anxious, and everybody's looking at each other a little bit funny. Nobody coughed. It was the beginning of that. And then I just remember, like, our flight got canceled, and we ran to a airline desk, and we got onto a flight to Los Angeles. They put us in first class. I was extra nice because they were just trying to get people to their destination. So we were kind of pumped on that. But I remember we landed, and our phones just lit up with like LinkedIn posts and all sorts of Twitter posts on how all these huge retailers were pulling out. I mean, Whole Foods is obviously the big target for us, so they're just pulling out. And they're, of course, LinkedIn for business. God, I hate LinkedIn. I'm on it. I don't enjoy it, but I just remember it was almost comical. The way we had these companies, like these huge CEOs of these like enormous companies soapboxing about we value the safety of our employees, so we're not going to be going to this either, and we call on this trade show to cancel, and Whole Foods is pulling out, Sprouts is pulling out, Kroger's pulling out, Target's pulling out. And we're sitting here, this small company where we've like laid all of our hopes on the line going, can you guys we have to do this because it's important to the survival of our business. And it was heartbreaking. It was tough, and we kept on justifying it.
Yes,
it sucked. So the next day we went, and Steve and I went over to the trade show, and our booth had landed in Anaheim. We had shipped it down from Victoria, and
which is not cheap in itself. I mean, the cost,
not cheap. Yeah. It's a nightmare. So we got down there, and I remember we went to the show office, and we said, listen, guys, you need to tell me now, like, are we building this booth? Because it was like a handmade booth, and it takes 3 hours to set up. So it's like, tell me now if you guys are going to cancel the show. Nope, show's going on. We went down, hour into the build, phones just going off, and getting this email that says the show's canceled. I have this. I have a video of me just like kicking a box, and the box just goes like sailing away. I was just like, God. Yeah, well, it wasn't as bad as the two guys at the end of our aisle who kept on building their booth, and I went down and said, "Hey guys, like you can stop. I gotta wrap it up." And they turned around. And I looked at his badge, and it said they were from Bangladesh. I was like,
"Oh no!"
So we had it bad, but I think other people had it worse. So it was a bummer. But yeah, we turned around and came back, and there was another show that was lined up right after that, and that canceled. And it was interesting because back in Victoria, people it hadn't set in at all. And I remember saying to my husband after the second show canceled, I said, I think we should go do a big grocery shop.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we should do this. And that night,
Get home.
I was on the National. They said everybody needs to go get 2 weeks worth of groceries, and it was pandemonium.
Yeah.
So that was like our sort of the start of our COVID experience. But I went on a bit of a tangent there because I kind of love that story in some ways.
No,
it's
I mean,
it's a good COVID story.
But it's not even, it's a COVID specific story as a result of COVID, but it is an entrepreneur story of you're literally putting everything on the line for these things, and then stuff that is totally out of your control, derail it. Yeah. And then now you talk about pivot. You know, like everybody, the word pivot was so, you know, prevalent during COVID. This is a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly entrepreneur's experience where they're not getting the traction and there's roadblocks, and now they've got to figure out a way to keep the wheels going. Right. And
so that was like 2020.
That was 2020.
And you did not get to talk to Whole Foods at that thing. So how did you come home and then get in touch with all these people anyway?
Listen, I coped in a different way. We shifted into being like, I don't know, I got back to Victoria and I saw the shelves empty, and I started to hear rumblings of people going like, hey, I don't have $200 to go spend on groceries, and the shelves are empty at all of these places. So even if you had $5 or $10 to go buy food, you couldn't get it. And so we shifted into being like an ad hoc food security organization for about a month and a half. And we started, it just felt like the thing to do. Like we had all this peanut butter. Yeah. It is a perfect food, as I said. Yeah. And people needed it. So I would have felt like a hoarder. Like I have a garage at the house, and it's, you know, full of peanut butter. Yeah. And knowing that, you know, people were food secure in Victoria. The people that had jobs, that had money, they were food secure. But there were so many that weren't.
That's right.
Employees weren't at food banks, so nobody was staffing them. Yeah. Nobody was giving away food because we were all hoarding it. Yeah. There was nothing going on at the food banks. There was nothing going on at, like, you know, shelf stable stuff, canned food, you know, craft dinners, all that stuff. None of that was there. So we started to donate a lot of peanut butter. Wow. I donated too much peanut butter, guys. I'm telling you, it was great. In the moment, it was great, but it hurt us in the long run. We donated over $200,000 worth of peanut butter over the next year. Wow. Because then we started seeing food banks in, you know, the United States, in other areas of Canada, in Vancouver. So we started shipping stuff off, and we had like all these good expectations from Loblaws and Sobeys that these POs were going to come in early spring. Of course, grocery stores shifted into, you know, preparing themselves for COVID. So all new listings were put on hold. Yeah. We were left with a ton of inventory. Wow. Because these POs never came. Yeah. And instead of, you know, wholesaling them to like an outlet, we donated it. And we did that, to my detriment, for sure. Yeah. I'm known for being a bit of a bleeding heart. So, but man, we felt so useful. And it was great because in the beginning of the pandemic, we didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah. Like, we didn't know if the thing was going to evolve into something like hyper deadly. Yeah. We didn't know when things were going to come back online. So at that time, it felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah, you're making the best decision you can with the information you have. And the expectation of the reward later sometimes doesn't come. But you're living with the reward in the moment. Yeah. But how do you, I guess then once things start coming back online, you're trying to figure out, okay, now we donated all this product, and which is dollars, right? Because you literally have to buy it in order to donate it, or pay for it at least. Yeah. You know, so what'd you do?
I dug myself into a hole. Yeah. That's exactly what I did. And I don't regret it necessarily. I mean, there's parts of it that I regret. Like, I maybe could have been a little bit more prudent with this, but as I said, like, things felt very, very dire. Yes. At that point in time. And, you know, we started all sorts of stuff. We did this thing called a safety sandwich program where we were pumping out 300 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. We got Salt Spring Island Kitchen on board. Oh, my God. Portofino.
Wow, cool.
We were, like, in my house just, like, masked up, like, gloves, like, just making these peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And we were delivering them to, like, food banks and down at street level because there was nobody giving food out anymore. Food, so, so that was my first year of unprofitability. And it's been hard to dig myself out of that hole ever since. Yeah. But things have come back online. I mean, we were obviously, right after things, quote unquote, came back online, supply chain.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't realize that the war in Ukraine was going to create pressure on sunflower seed oil, which we were using at the time.
Yeah.
We launched, what did we launch? We launched 4 new products during the pandemic. And the almond and seed line just became untenable in the face of supply chain, and this, sunflower seeds come from the Ukraine. So we thought we had kind of eliminated that threat a bit by discontinuing those 3 items, only to find out that because people can't get sunflower oil, they want coconut oil, which is a main ingredient in our product as well. So, it's been these, we went from one global force where, we navigated it with, I think, a good sense of what needed to be done at the time, but then we're sort of thrown into, the output of COVID, which was the supply chain and, staffing, labor, inflation. It's like, it's a lot.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah. So navigating that has been incredibly tough. And, we continue to expand. We've expanded to Texas. 218 stores down there, HEB, which is Texas's largest retailer. We just had a really productive meeting with Whole Foods Global, which was a career highlight for me, was going down to Austin, Texas, and walking into like the global headquarters of Whole Foods by invitation, and sitting down with our category buyers and them raving about the product. So we're hopeful. That was last month. We'll see.
What's the time, like from that meeting to like PO? Like 6 months?
It could be, it could be 6 months. We're looking at California as our sort of next, conquest, but we'll see. There's no promises with that. I mean, it was a great meeting, and we're hopeful that we'll get a listing out of it. But Whole Foods has always been a really good vehicle for us. So we still have a lot of really interesting things happening. We're listed in Walmart, which with one SKU, which is huge for us. It's a nationwide listing. And we're going to chase down some Costco. So if there's any Costco buyers out there, we're going to come knocking on your door because we want to get these bigger jars out there.
I'm getting PTSD from my former career in import.
Yeah. So I've not done any tangoing with Costco yet, but I know it can be.
These organizations are fantastic. Mm-hmm. And if and I think now, after 6 years, especially probably in the last 2 or 3 years, you've got a really good understanding of the pitfalls. So, and then, just the most important thing from my experience was just making sure that you build in enough marketing dollars.
Oh, we've done that this time.
And all of that. And sometimes you're just like scratching your head and going, do they not want, like something like the entrepreneurial vendor who is competing against these big category people, and, where they've got deep pockets, deep marketing money, and, also the experience. Mm-hmm. But they're just kind of like, they tend to just wipe out the less experienced, more independent providers, which is a shame. It's a shame for production choices from the consumer standpoint, and also just that they can really, bankrupt some.
Let me talk on this a little bit, because I have some very strong feelings on this, and be careful what I say.
It's okay. There's only 3 people left.
Okay, good. Thank God.
Yeah.
I'll speak in general terms. We recently got a charge of $30,000 from a larger retailer, well known, people that are consumers are very loyal to, because we discontinued our almond and seed butters because it was dragging down the business. It was the right thing to do. It was an unsustainable product. And we got charged $30,000 for the inconvenience of this retailer taking it off their shelves. Now, consumers don't know this. There is I'm risking. It's fine. You know what? It's fine.
Do it.
I'm gonna do it.
Do it. I know who you're talking about.
So there's. I would love to know. I know that it is a large portion. Like why are some of the biggest retailers in Canada experiencing record profits? Yeah. Why are consumers not asking why this is the case? It's not because you're spending more there. I guarantee you.
No, their sales are very flat.
Yeah. They are making more revenue because the price increases, like we as a producer, almost impossible to get through right now.
Yeah.
I can't raise the price of my product. Retailers though, and I will say local to national will raise prices on a consumer because they know the consumer thinks it's the greedy entrepreneur that's raising the prices.
Yeah.
And it's not. And if it is, it's not out of greed, it's out of survival.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we recently had, because I sit on a board, the BC Food and Beverage Association, and we're starting to get some people together to start to understand how much profit is derived directly from fees and fines of vendors. Because consumers don't know this. Like I don't think consumers know that it cost me $120,000 to list my products nationally with a national retailer.
Yeah.
It cost
insane.
you
Yeah, it cost me. It cost me.
And where did that go? Where'd that money go?
Great question. No idea, but probably into that profit bank.
Who did you cut the check to?
To the retailer.
To the retailer.
Oh yeah, and this is standard, right? So, and it's not means based. I will pay as much as Kraft pays.
Yeah, that's right.
Kraft will pay $30,000 to get their 3 SKUs delisted from a retailer. I will pay the same. It is not means based. Kraft doesn't. They don't care. Yeah. That's a drop in the bucket. Hardly that, right? For us, it was nearly crippling. In fact, we are still feeling the effects of trying to get our cash flow back online.
And they take early pay discounts, whether they pay early or don't pay early. And there's marketing dollars, whether you get put in there or not.
The disadvantage to vendors like us, especially small producers, is it's really astounding, and the level that the consumer doesn't know. Yeah. Like I'm not getting paid. We've got $100,000 in outstanding overdue payments from some of the biggest companies in Canada, and in order for me to even tell them that they're late, I have to wait 10 days depending on it, 30 days depending on it. Even then, I'll get a runaround and I'll be sent to this person, that person. They'll send me huge Excel spreadsheets that won't tell me anything. Yeah. It is unbelievable. We had an experience where we found out that we were in like 100 extra stores that weren't really aligned with our brand. Yeah. And we said to this big national retailer, like, hey, we just got this bill for $45,000 for a listing fee. Like, why did we get this? They said, well, we put you in these 100 stores. And we said, well, no, we don't want to be in these 100 stores. It's not aligned with us. He said, fine, we'll just take you right off the shelves nationwide. So we've got guns to our heads. And the consumer does not know this. And there's, I mean, I could go on.
Oh, no, I know.
It is really tough.
So where would you, the owner of FATSO, want me to go buy your product? Where do you make
get the most value?
Where I buy, where the consumer buys?
I'll say locally, but if I'm being honest, at this stage of growth, and this is going to piss people off, I need you to go buy at the big retailers. Yeah. It sucks.
Even then, huh?
Even then. Yeah. Because that's where I am going to get the most traction, the most sustainability. It's where I'm going to get bigger POs. So, I would always say support your local retailer, for sure. But, like, as a company at our size now, like, we can't not support our level of growth because we need to be able to keep these listings, and they are tenuous right now because, we are getting hit. Like, our margins are razor thin, and people are jumping ship. It's really interesting because like consumer behavior is like
it's so
hard
fickle.
It's really hard to determine where people are shopping, what they're shopping for, who's a staple, who's not a staple, like who's going to be affected by inflation, who's not going to be affected by inflation. So, I just need people to keep buying it overall. And they do. And we're, I shouldn't complain because, our business does well. But I would really encourage consumers to start to be a little bit more critical in their thinking around retail consumership. Yeah. Because I think it's really easy to lump us in with big conglomerates and say, oh, they're just greedy and, they're trying to raise profits. But look at the profits of your retailers.
Yeah, where the profits are going to them.
I look at grocery stores out by where I live, and they just keep opening more grocery stores, bigger and bigger and bigger, and their shelves are half full. Yeah. Yet they keep opening. The population is not growing as fast as these retail stores are. Yeah. There must be a butt ton of profit to be made. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
really
a bummer, and
exposing.
it's frustrating because, like, at the federal level, there is, there's attempts at legislation to make, some of these, practices more equitable. But the people that are at the table are not me. People at the table are multinational conglomerates. Yeah. So I don't even get to, debate this, which is why I've become active in tackling this issue, because I get it. Like, you guys are different styles of business than us. You guys are going to always be profit driven. You're always going to be growth driven. You're always going to answer to shareholders. We're different businesses. So you're going to charge me fees and fines to add to your bottom line in any way, shape, or form. If I'm 3 minutes late, you're going to fine me $250. Yeah. I get it. That's just the way it is. I have no recourse in that. But I would argue that there are some practices that are making it really difficult for more businesses to participate in a free market.
Yes.
That's the argument I would make.
Yeah, no, and I think that is a very good point, because those are barriers that you're not in control of, and you have arbitrary people deciding what they're going to take off your check, and then you literally have to go fight for it back.
Oh yeah.
And when you're expecting, a $200,000 payment coming in, and it's $120,
yeah,
like those are
killer.
It's killer.
It's killer.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
It kind of makes me think about the whole question of, is growth equivalent to success?
And that's really, like, because businesses at the level of, like, some of what these retailers are doing, and the business of, say, I have no problem throwing Kraft under the bus, because Kraft's Kraft. I don't know, but buy me also Kraft.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Open to acquisition.
Yes.
But, like, they just don't have a vested interest in fighting for these things, and I understand that they're in this high profitability space, and they're only concerned about whether those profits, like, decrease or increase, and that's really just where they are. Yeah. But we're a different type of business. And I would argue we're a growing breed of business as well, where we're socially minded, we're conscious of what we're doing, we're conscious of growth and sustainability, and we have different ways of entering the market and participating in the market. So, it is hard to go up against these businesses that are these really, like, runaway machines of capitalism, not to get too political, but it's hard to go and try to negotiate when you just don't have a lot of skin in the game, right? It's tough. So, those are some of the challenges that we've come up against. But as a politically engaged person, I, of course, have created, like, a subcommittee on my board, and, we're going to try and take this to, hopefully to the province and maybe federally, and say, like, hey, like, we're not
some attention needs to be drawn.
Some attention needs to be drawn to it, because
what they can do, what they can't do, how much notice they need to give, and I think all those are. I mean, I know I did it for 6 or 7 years, and it was eye-opening. Yeah, to say the least, and it hasn't changed. Yeah. It's probably maybe even gotten a little bit worse, especially in a climate where you can just raise prices indiscriminately.
Oh yeah,
to a large degree.
I've been thinking lots about my own career, which is a product, like you guys. Everyone's got a product they sell, and I don't want to sell products anymore because they're so volatile. Really I want to sell ideas, experiences. Yeah. I don't want to sell a product anymore.
It's a tough game.
Now I really don't want to. Thanks so much, Jill.
Yeah.
Well, and Jill, we're going to have to wrap up shortly.
Oh,
but in your plate of plates, you've decided to run for school district.
I did.
Board.
I did, yeah. I was really alarmed. It's so interesting, though, because a lot of the political movements that we're starting to see are a result of this sort of the COVID culture. Yeah. Just seeing this slate of candidates from Viva that are running on an anti-sexual orientation, gender and identity policies that have been put into BC schools. They're not, like, ironclad policies, by the way. These are guidances. Yeah. And to see a electoral organization form and the underhanded way. I mean, we saw this in the United States with these right-wing, far-right extremists, I would call them extremist groups, going after school board elections because people don't pay attention to school board. Yeah, and it's a really easy way to interject your politics. Yeah. And so I was really alarmed by that. And at first I thought, okay, well, just, you know what? I'm going to print up my own flyers. I'm going to go canvass in Victoria. I'm going to tell people about Viva. Yeah. Because if they know about Viva, then they're not going to vote for them. And being somebody that is 8 months pregnant and also running a business, I was like, I think it's going to be easier if I run, which I know sounds insane, but I kind of just thought if I run, I have some I have a little bit of name recognition, so maybe I can draw some attention to this. And so I put my nomination papers in last week and joined Victoria Politics on Twitter, which is a dumpster fire.
Oh my God, I love it.
It is wild.
You can't take it seriously.
No.
And you got to realize that there's very few people that are actually paying attention.
It's such a minority.
But it's awesome.
It feels so big.
Because you get to say whatever the hell you want.
It's really fun.
I love it.
So, but I think, if I can leave your listeners with a message is that go vote this year. It is really important. We have a wacky slate of candidates for mayor, for city council, and for school board. School board is important. It sets 100%. A lot of policy. It sets budgets. So it's a great way for people to, if this is what gets people off their couches or off Twitter and to the polls and to be engaged in the conversation, I think it's worthwhile. And I would say please investigate the 33 candidates for school board. It's usually about 12.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Right? So, and many of the incumbents are not running again this year. There was some controversy at the school board level last year or the last term. So some people have opted not to run. So there are a lot of positions open. And I would say, hey, go investigate your candidates.
Totally. Understand
and vote for the candidate that is the
most
best
aligned
for you.
With your views.
Yeah. I'm not going to be bummed if I don't get onto school board. I would be honored, and I think I have some value there. But we've got some really, really great candidates, and there'll be some profiles coming out of those candidates as well. So just don't vote for Viva, and don't worry about it when you go to the polls. Their electoral organization will be right beside it. So you don't need to know their names. Just don't vote for Viva. That's my message.
I love it. Well, we'll get that message out as well. We're aligned. But thank you for joining us, Jill. Your story was super interesting.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to do this again in the future to see how some of your initiatives have either taken root and maybe you're on the school or
maybe I'm on the school board.
I really wanted this hour to go on a little bit longer so that I could ask you about your product and how it's made and all that, but we'll save that for another session.
Part 2.
I really love of how it's made. I want to see how the sausage is made.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's curious mind will send.
My curious old mind needs to know how peanut butter comes together, and yours in particular because it has so many different ingredients. I want to know supply chain issues of getting products in, that's for next time. Yeah. But we will leave you with all those burning questions for part 2.
Okay. That's good.
Thanks, Jill.
Thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jill. It was great having you here.
Thank you.
All right, another great show.
Another one. Oh, my God. Kaylin, feels like we're just cranking them out of the park.
I know. We're killing it, I think. Let's pat ourselves on the back.
Okay.
All right. You too. All right. Remember to be kind.
Okay. As long as you be nice.
I'll be nice. You be
Cheers.
kind.
Have a great day.
Cheers.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Toque, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.